A right is a person's entitlement to something. A person has a right when that person is entitled to possess something or to act in a certain way. In other words, that person is entitled to have others act in a certain way towards him or her.
The entitlement may be derived from a legal system that permits or empowers the person to act in a specified way or requires others to act in certain ways towards that person. This entitlement is called a legal right. Legal rights are limited to the particular jurisdiction within which the legal system is in force.
Entitlement can also be derived from a system of moral standards independent of any particular legal system. These rights are called moral or human rights and are based on a set of moral standards or principles.
These norms and principles specify that all human beings are permitted or empowered to do something or are entitled to have something done for them. Moral rights, unlike legal rights, are usually thought of as being universal insofar as they are rights that all human beings of every nationality possess to an equal extent simply by virtue of being human beings. Moral rights have three important features. First, moral rights are tightly correlated with duties. Second, moral rights provide individuals with autonomy and equality in the free pursuit of their interests. And third, moral rights provide a basis for justifying one's actions and for invoking the protection of others.
William T. Blackstone has argued that the possession of a livable environment is not merely a desirable state of affairs, but something to which each human being has a right.
A livable environment is not merely something that we would all like to have. It is something that others have a duty to allow us to have. Because we each have a right to a livable environment, our rights impose on others the correlative duty of not interfering in our exercise of that duty. This right should therefore be incorporated into our legal system. Several nations have now introduced amendments to their constitutions that grant their citizens environmental rights. India has also made significant provisions in its constitution to protect the environmental rights of its citizens. The directive principles of state policy of the Indian Constitution clearly states, "The state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forests and wildlife of the country." The fundamental duties in the Indian Constitution bestows upon every citizen the duty to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and have compassion for living creatures. Likewise, specific instructions have also been laid down for local bodies and the administration at various levels to ensure the preservation of various aspects of the environment for the welfare of its citizens.
Blackstone's concept of environmental right is based on Kantian theory of rights. According to this theory, all human beings have a moral duty to treat each other as ends, not as means. Therefore, human beings have a correlative duty to support and respect the development of another's capacity which is chosen freely and rationally for himself or herself. The main difficulty with Blackstone's view is that it fails to provide some meaningful guidance on some pressing environmental choices. For example,
How much pollution control is really needed? Should we have an absolute control on pollution? How far should we go in limiting property rights for the sake of environment? Who should pay for the cost of preserving the environment?
So far as Blackstone's view is concerned, it fails to provide the ways to handle such questions because it suggests only simple and absolute ban on pollution.
The depletion of most scarce resources lies far in the future, and the effects of their depletion are primarily a concern for the future generations. Pollution is a problem concerned primarily with renewable resources like air and water. Resource depletion, however, is concerned with finite non-renewable resources that will be around tomorrow only if they are left over from today. Hence, conservation is the only way to ensure a supply for tomorrow's generations.
Resource depletion raises two very important issues before us. Number one, why should we conserve resources for future generations? And number two, for the sake of argument, even if it is accepted that yes, this is necessary, then how much resources should we conserve?
It appears that we have an obligation to conserve resources for future generations because they too have an equal right to the limited resources of this planet.
And we all have an equal right towards them. And if that is so, then by using these resources, by depleting these resources, the present generation is violating the equal right of the future generation to these limited resources. However, it is interesting to note that there is an opposite school of thought also. Some writers have claimed that it is a mistake to think about the rights of future generations. Three important reasons have been shown to support this particular view, saying that future generations do not have any rights. Firstly, future generations cannot intelligently be said to have any right simply because they do not exist, and they may never exist. Future generations, future people exist only in imagination, and imaginary entities cannot have any rights, cannot be acted upon in any way whatsoever other than in imagination. Secondly, if future generations have environmental rights, it might lead to the absurd conclusion that we must sacrifice the entire civilization for their sake. And thirdly, it can be said that someone has a certain right only if it is known that certain interests are there which that right protects. The purpose of a right is to protect the interest of the right holder, and here the present generation is totally ignorant, totally unaware about the rights or the interests of future generations.
If these arguments are correct, then the present generation is uncertain about how future generations will exist and what they will like. Hence, these reasons do not allow the present generation to worry about the environmental rights of the future generations.
But it is also unjust for the present generation to leave nothing for the future generation. In this regard, John Rawls has suggested that a just way of distributing the resources between generations be determined.